Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. Hollywood writers and Hollywood actors are on strike against the major movie studios. And if both sides really don't watch themselves, they may wind up alienating the audience the same way that Major League Baseball did back in 1994. Now, back in 1994, the Players Union and the owners could not come to an agreement on a new contract. And while they had disagreements on issues like a salary cap and other issues, both sides were so far apart that they decided to walk out in the middle of the 1994 season, where teams like the New York Yankees and the Montreal Expos were looking like they were going to become World Series contenders. And because the players walked out on the owners, many people wound up becoming extremely angry, and they became angry because they had invested a lot into the game and felt like they were betrayed by both the players and the owners. Now, as this strike continued to go on, what happened was over the coming months was that the 1994 season wound up getting canceled, and as the 1994 season got canceled and the World Series got canceled for the first time since 1904, most people started to sour on the game of baseball. And as they soured on the game of baseball, they started to want to find other things to get involved with as related to their time. So what happened was the players and the owners thought they could get the public to sympathize with them. And unfortunately, the public didn't sympathize with either side. They didn't sympathize because many of the players from the late 80s onward were being paid these high salaries, and they didn't sympathize with the owners who were making billions of dollars, as baseball was at the height of its popularity with high attendance at most games. So most American people who were working paycheck to paycheck were not sympathetic with either side. And as they became less sympathetic to either side, they started to look to move on. Now, this was a body blow to both sides as related to this whole impasse, because even with the federal government trying to step in, both sides remained far apart into 1995, to the point where the owners were looking to go out here and get replacement players to replace the players that they used to pay to play Major League Baseball. Unfortunately, what happened was the American public had soured on baseball to the point where they had no interest in going to the games. The American public had no interest in the games because they had been soured by the greed that was shown by both sides. And as they were soured by the greed that they saw on both sides, what happened was baseball stopped becoming America's pastime and was fading into irrelevancy. And the thing that really got both sides back to the table was the fact that people were forgetting about baseball. People had stopped caring about baseball and were looking to find other things to do. And that was the death blow to the strike, because the players and the owners knew that if they had lost the audience, what would happen is they would not be able to make any money at all. Now, when I look at what happened with Major League Baseball, I see mirrors with this 2023 strike as related to the writers and the actors. And if both sides really can't come to an agreement, they may wind up fading into irrelevancy, and may wind up fading into irrelevancy longer than the 10 years it took for Major League Baseball to rebuild its audience. Now, what's happening here with the writers and the actors is that they're not really looking at the American public, who are basically fed up with both the writers and the actors and the Hollywood studios. They are fed up with all three of these factions, and they're fed up with them because when they look at them, they don't really see, one, quality content, and two, they don't sympathize with many of the actors and the writers who they believe are making lots of money. What they see from the actors, the writers, and the studios is a lot of greed, similar to what we saw with Major League Baseball in 1994. And they see a lot of this greed, and it's turning the American public off as related to this labor dispute. And without that public support, you really cannot really have a strong labor dispute. And that was shown to everyone in 1994 and 1995 with Major League Baseball, which alienated all of the American public who really didn't have much sympathy for millionaires and billionaires fighting over money. And the same thing is happening here with the Hollywood writers and the Hollywood actors and the movie studios. There's not much sympathy to go around as related to taking a side as related to this strike. Now, all of this could do damage to an already struggling entertainment industry, an entertainment industry that has suffered a lot of body blows ever since 1996 with the Telecom Act, which wound up consolidating American media and eliminating competition. Now, on top of the Telecom Act consolidating media, which has given us the mediocre entertainment we're seeing right now, we also have TV going digital in 2009, which drove a lot of America's eyes from television and movies to the internet. And with this strike, it could be the death blow for American entertainment, because more and more people are going to places like YouTube to get their news and entertainment, and the entire Hollywood system could wind up collapsing and imploding if both sides don't come to an agreement, because if the audience winds up getting alienated from the entire entertainment system, the way they did with Major League Baseball, the entire Hollywood system may not ever get a chance to recover, because people are not sympathetic to either the writers, the actors, or the studios, because they look at the quality of the product that is being produced today, and they're not seeing much that they're getting for their money, whether it be with a movie ticket, whether it be with a Netflix subscription or a streaming service subscription. They're not seeing much that they're getting for their money, and because they're not seeing what they're getting for their money, what's happening is people are looking to tune out, and that's really shown with the whole drop of subscriptions with streaming services like Disney Plus and Netflix and Paramount Plus, as people have gotten turned off by what they call social justice content and things like the Netflix movie Cuties. A lot of people have gotten turned off by the content that Hollywood currently produces, and Hollywood has been limping along ever since the pandemic wound up driving all of their theaters to close. So Hollywood is not really in a good place, especially the studios, which has had the worst year ever since about 1990. Now, the Hollywood studios, they are not in a place where they're doing well because they're not producing quality content, one. And two, a lot of their movies are failing at the box office, and they are not in a place where they're getting a lot of support from the public. Moreover, the actors and the writers aren't getting a lot of support. And again, like Major League Baseball, both sides have overplayed their hands and really think that they have support from the public, but they don't have that support from the public that they really think that they have. They think that, oh, there's people can't do out without movies and television, but people have been doing without movies and television ever since about 2009, ever since people started migrating over to YouTube, ever since people started moving over to YouTube and even other media platforms like Rumble and Odyssey. People have been moving over to these platforms and watching content over there because the content on most of these corporate-run media platforms has gotten dry and stale. I mean, I've seen us going from a variety of content like talk shows and game shows and court shows to just nonstop news on television. And when it comes to the movies, all we get is remakes and rehash and superhero movies. So people are not getting the variety that they want as related to content. And people are looking at most of these movie studios and these writers and actors and seeing them in the same way they saw Major League Baseball in the 90s. Now, Major League Baseball, again, alienated all of their audience by having this long strike, and a long, protracted strike would wind up alienating the American audience the same way Major League Baseball did. Now, the owners thought, they would be able to dig in their heels with Major League Baseball, and as things went on and the government tried to step in, they continued to dig their heels in, thinking they had leverage, similar to what the Hollywood executives believe that they have. They believe they can starve out the writers, but they may wind up alienating the audience, who will just say enough is enough of the greed. And they're saying enough is enough because American people have already been through a pandemic. They've already had to deal with their whole lives being upheaved. And it's just a major turnoff to most average, everyday working Americans to watch millionaires and billionaires sitting there fighting over money because they're trying to live paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet. Meanwhile, you've got millionaires and billionaires fighting over money and showing how detached and disconnected they are from the people who pay their salaries. That's what's really got a lot of American people angry out here as related to this strike. They're angry because they are out here working, busting their asses every day, and they go out here and they're seeing these people fighting over money, and they really cannot go out here and sympathize with either side. Even though I look at the writers and the actors and I can say, yes, you have valid justification as related to getting compensation for royalties, and you have a valid point about going out here and structuring something as related to writers' rooms for these streaming services, which have taken advantage of writers and actors. And I also believe there's a valid argument as related to regulating AI. I really believe that there needs to be federal intervention on AI to regulate this device, because people should not have to sign away their digital image or their digital likeness for perpetuity. There really needs to be some protections, but the big problem I see with this whole strike is you may wind up losing all support from the American people, who are frustrated and fed up with having to deal with terrible content on streaming services, that really the problem was not the writers, it was the producers and the executives who were looking to cut corners by hiring inexperienced writers. And the main reason why those shows like She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, and Secret Invasion, and many other net shows like The Witcher are so terrible isn't really the writer's fault, because the writer can only write what an executive producer and a director tell him to or her to. So a lot of people don't know what's going on here, and just like they didn't know what was going on in 1994, a lot of people are just frustrated and fed up with watching rich people arguing with rich people over money, more money than they have in their lifetimes, not understanding that every one of these writers and actors doesn't really make a lot of money. I mean, for every $20 million superstar like a Denzel Washington or a Will Smith, there are actors out here who barely make $25,000, $26,000 a year, and there are writers who barely make $40,000 to $50,000 a year, and they're trying to go out here and make a living and trying to get royalties for their work as related to streaming. And a lot of people don't know what's going on as related to the intricacies of this whole strike. But the whole thing is, a long protracted strike could do damage not only to the writers, which the executives are trying to do. The executives have invested their feelings in trying to break the writers, but they may wind up breaking the entire Hollywood system as people get tired of greed. And as they get tired of greed, they may wind up walking away from movies and television and may wind up migrating over to YouTube further. And again, what I'm seeing again is a tactical error on the part of disconnected executives like Bob Iger, disconnected executives who don't really see the big picture and don't really see how bad things could get. No, he can't see how bad things could get because, again, in 1994, the owners thought they had the advantage until they wound up realizing, hey, people aren't watching anymore, people aren't caring anymore, people aren't even talking about baseball anymore. I mean, that's what really terrified both the owners and the players and made them scramble to get back to the table, because as people started to say, hey, I don't even care about baseball at this point, that's what really terrified all of those people, because they realized that the stuff that they were squabbling with would mean nothing if there was no audience to watch anything at all. That was a thing that terrified both sides, because they saw in 1995, when they were going to put their replacement players up, nobody was watching, and many of the players saw that nobody was talking about them in the media. And I believe, sadly, the same thing would have to happen to the Hollywood overall. You would have to hear people saying, hey, I don't even care about movies anymore. I don't care about TV anymore. I'll go watch this YouTuber over here. I'll go watch this YouTuber over and check out their content. I'll go drop a Cash App or a Patreon donation on that YouTuber and help them get whatever project they're going up. If they've got a trip they want to go on, in some cases, I'll help pay for that trip. If they've, like me, got comics they want to produce, they'll send a donation to go help pay for that comic. Or they'll go out here and help that person go out here and make a production. That is what people are right now. People are at the point where they're fed up with these rich executives and these corporate oligarchs. They're upset about these actors and these writers, again, squabbling over money and squabbling over opportunities they could never have, and them not appreciating the audience that's out here, not appreciating the people who, again, pay their salaries. They look at all of these executives and these actors and these writers, they look at them with contempt. And again, everybody is just blind to the fact that the audience really isn't into them. And again, this is what led to Major League Baseball, again, not being able to regain its audience. And this could do devastating damage to the entire Hollywood system, because right now the Hollywood system is in the worst place since the late 1960s. The studios are in the worst place since the late 1960s. And the studios are again recovering from a pandemic, and they're recovering from a pandemic that was damaged, that damaged their brands, and this further compounds the damage to their brands. And nobody's really thinking critically or looking at the big picture regarding Hollywood right now, and they're not seeing how everything is mirroring 1994, and not seeing that you may not get the second chance that Major League Baseball did when Mark McGwire broke Roger Maris's record. You may not get that second chance to be able to be a part of American pop culture. You may not get that second chance because the audience has been walking away for over a decade, and you may not get that second chance because many of these studios are on the brink of bankruptcy, and a protracted strike continues to make it where, if it continues to go on, there may not be an American audience to watch American movies, and there may not be American movie studios to go out here and think they're going to save money on AI, because if you don't have an audience that cares about anything, then you're not going to be able to stay in business. And again, this is where the studios don't really see how dire things are. And because they can't see how dire things are, they don't really take a look at the big picture. You have studio executives who think they can wait out the writers and the actors, but you may not be able to wait out the audience, who may be out here looking at YouTubers and saying, hey, I'll go support those YouTubers because those YouTubers appreciate me. Those YouTubers are talking to me. Those YouTubers are speaking to me. Those YouTubers want a relationship with me. Those YouTubers respect me. So I'll go to them because they will go out here and make an effort to care about me. And that's what the audience is seeing right now. And this is what's flying over the heads of disconnected executives, disconnected actors, and inexperienced writers who don't know the business. No, those of us who know the business understand a little something is better than nothing. And that's something my late father taught me. A little something is better than nothing. And giving these writers and actors $600 million could keep the business making billions, but because you've got greedy, disconnected executives who can't see the big picture and caught up in their feelings, they can't really see how the American people are pissed off at this point. The American people who just went through a pandemic, the American people who went through things like jab mandates in places like California and New York. A lot of those people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost their ability to make a living. A lot of people are struggling paycheck to paycheck. And it really, again, pisses them off when they see millionaires and billionaires arguing over money and not even caring about a common person to say, oh, I'll wait people out on a strike. Again, you're pissing people off and not seeing where you're going, because if you make people mad in this country, we the people walk away from an entire business, and that's what could happen to Hollywood at this point. They're not seeing where they are, and where they are is a very dark place that could lead to all of the lights going out in Hollywood for a final time, because we've got theaters all across the country closing and a lot of businesses leaving, and again, not looking at the big picture, because feelings about, oh, I want to crush those writers, I want to crush those actors, I'm going to replace them with AI. Well, again, critical question I've asked many times: if you get rid of the writers and the actors and the average day, everyday working man, who's going to buy your shit? That's the critical question I ask the executives out here in Hollywood. Who's going to buy your stuff? Because not only do actors are the ones going to suffer, and writers as well, it's also the dry cleaners, it's also the people in food services and craft services, it's also all of those people. And again, the state of California is quivering in its boots, because that's a tax base of taxpayers. And again, you have disconnected executives who can't see the reality, because they can't see people, because they're so caught up in box office and numbers that they can't see how they're doing damage to themselves. And again, don't see that where they are the same way Major League Baseball owners didn't see where they were. And again, those Major League Baseball owners couldn't see where they were until 1995, when they saw the audience had moved on, similar to what happened to comic books at the same time. Again, comic books were an American pastime as well, but they started to get too big for their draws. And as they got too big for their draws, they forgot the public. And as they forgot the public, they wound up crashing as well and never recovering, because 30 years after the comic book industry collapsed, what happened is the industry still has not recovered. And it still has not recovered because many people looked at, again, all of these rich guys who were just not really listening to the public. And again, in order for a strike to be effective, in order for a business to make money, you need the support of the public. And if the public isn't there to care, then what will happen is you're just going to go out of business, or you're going to be on the brink of going out of business, the way Major League Baseball was back in 1994. Now, if you want to pick up my first comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that on lulu.com right now. And if you want to check out many of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Smith-Torella trilogy, and my screenplay books all about Marilyn and all about Nikki, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online bookstores like Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. And if you'd like to see me make more videos and make my next comic, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, All About the Goddess. The Goddess Next Door bears all in the art studio to catch a campus stalker in this action-packed ISIS series mystery. Get your copy of ISIS, All About the Goddess in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.